I really became an environmentalist in two ways. One was having Phil Berry, who was active in the Sierra Club and a law school classmate of mine, take me up into the Sierra for the first time.
And Fred became interested. Fred and I had started backpacking together in law school.
Once you get into the Sierra and you see it, and you see anything that's a threat to it, you're an environmentalist, unless there's something wrong with you.
One of the first people I met was a Trout Unlimited meeting, and it turned out to be Mr. Phil Berry. So he immediately roped me into
The Sierra Club Legal Committee, out of which the Legal Defense Fund, now Earthjustice, grew, were a very narrow group of lawyers who were volunteering their time. So it came down to Phil Berry, Tony Ruckel in Denver, Don Harris, and me.
Well, there were various people who began to believe that conservation law could be developed as a separate subject, and more particularly that we could use the courts to affect good results.
we just got mad. It was Barry, Fisher, and myself, and we just got mad about the way things were going. Forests getting torn up and the streams getting polluted, and wanted to see if there was something we could do about it. We were all three trial lawyers, so we figured we could make something happen, and did.
You know, there was a ferment at this time going on. You may recall an exciting growth of statutes. NEPA was passed, the National Environmental Policy Act, I think in '68. Clean Air Act shortly thereafter, Clean Water Act shortly thereafter. All of a sudden, tools were made available where you could do something about the outrages that were occurring, whereas that didn't exist before. Brower really inspired us. I mean, his first action, getting the lawyers involved, was the protection of the Grand Canyon from the Grand Canyon dams. And what the lawyers did was somewhat futile and at the fringes, but it was a key kind of holding action while Brower won the case, or won the matter politically in Congress. And you know, the board at that time of the Sierra Club was of mixed feelings about this. And I think Brower's and Phil Berry's visions were key factors there. They were spark plugs and motivators. And I don't think they were confined, Brower certainly was not confined in any way by anybody, certainly not by lawyers.
There was a marvelous sense of camaraderie and of doing right, and also tremendous support from the public for what we were doing. People seemed to really recognize the importance of having a public interest conservation law firm.
When we founded the Defense Fund, if memory serves me correctly, Ed Wayburn was president of the Sierra Club. And he was very supportive. I mean, he knows a good idea when he hears one. And the fact that they could have free lawyers and that we could run it was very, very attractive to him. And he was very encouraging.
Dad would show up at Don and Fred's office and say, here's a lawsuit we need to file, and I know you boys want to do that. And he was there so frequently that it was interfering with their ability to perform their other duties for the law firm that they worked for.
Once the word was out that there was free legal advice for the environment, the cases poured in the door at a fantastic rate from all over the country, more than we could even spend the time to analyze all of them.
Fred and Don were willing to serve on the board, the founding board, and my dad thought it was a great idea. Then he'd have more lawyers available to bring lawsuits to protect the natural world.
It took off pretty fast. It was a sort of new idea, but we had to do it. I mean, we were struggling to handle an avalanche of interest in bringing lawsuits, in doing things. The Mineral King case, as I say, opened the door. And once the door was opened, all of a sudden these cases were everywhere.
Mineral King was a beautiful high basin in the Sierra Nevadas. And it was an area that the Walt Disney Corporation was interested in exploiting as a ski area. And Ed and the Sierra Club and Don and Fred and anybody who'd ever been in that area thought it ought to be protected for everyone. Ideally as a national park. I remember some conversation about that early on, but certainly as a wilderness area.
And we get people coming in the door who have serious conservation problems, serious water problems, serious pollution problems, whatever it is. And we give them a voice which they otherwise couldn't afford. And I think it's very important. I think a lot of people have, you know, strange groups of people have showed up at our door and become fond of us because we actively want to have citizen participation. It's a very good democratic process in my view.
We provide that representation to hundreds, many hundreds of organizations, and that gives people hope. It gives them a sense of participation in the process. It gives them a weapon to use for the common good, and to me that's the most important thing. Now, we were known as the Sierra Club Legal Defense Fund for a long time, and we finally decided to change our name so that without conflict with the Sierra Club we could represent clients, other clients in Congress, and not have any confusion with the Sierra Club name. All kinds of organizations throughout the country now have a way of making their impact felt.
Many times when I wish we had twice the resources so that we could be twice as big and respond to twice as many needs, which are there, certainly. But I think ultimately the right decisions have been made by staff and board about what it should be the size of this organization and how it should operate. It's been responsive, flexible, adaptive. It's been very successful, which has made it dangerous to the forces that are against the interests of the people of this country.
We learned that you can win a case in court and get screwed in Congress very quickly and lose your victories. So the second big change was developing a Washington, D.C. lobbying presence, if you want to call it that, to protect our victories in court. They figure if they lose in the courts, they can go to Congress and get a fix through a conservative Congress, and often that's true. We're still facing delisting of endangered species. We're facing a total resistance by government to any new listings of endangered species, regardless of the evidence. So is it a complete success? No. It's a long way from a complete success. But by God, if we hadn't done what we've done, what kind of a mess would we be in that would be worse?
Earthjustice, an enormous role. It's in my judgment, the leader of all of them. I've always viewed environmental law as one of the frontline divisions in the conservation fight. Mostly it's a holding action. Very few outright wins that give you everything you want with just one lawsuit. But as a battler, it's right up there with the best of them.
The people who are the conservationists of the world, the Sierra Club folks of the world, are pretty passionate people. And we gave them a way to express that passion and a way to make changes in things that we all care about very much.
People said about us that we had successfully brought the entire environmental community into a position where it had a voice, where it could speak to the courts, could protect rights of its members and citizens in its community, and that we were its principal spokesman.